We've got shells for the top and bottom of the plane, but now we need to do the vertical stabilizer in the back here. We can employ a similar technique for that. Let's go around to the back, get in close and enter Edge Component Mode. Right-click, Edge. And we want to double-click on the edge loop at the seam here. Double-click. That edge loop is now selected, as you can see. And separate those once again. And then select those shells, right-click, and choose Shell Component Mode. We can select in the main view if we want. Drag that over just to move it aside. And then do another projection once again from the main menu here. Create UVs, planar mapping options. We do want to use the default x-axis and keep image width height ratio enabled. Click project. And you'll see it's the wrong size here in the UV texture editor. All we need to do is scale it to the same size that we scaled the other shells. We'll do that from the channel box. Move this over so we can get at that. Projection width and height. Once again, set those to 22. And now that's proportionally scaled to the rest of the object. We can use the move tool, move that shell wherever we want. Right now we have overlapping UVs. Both sides of the stabilizer will be mapped the same way. And one of them will be a mirror image of the other. If we had text here, it would read left to right on one side and right to left on the other side. We want to separate this as well. So we can select the edge loop that borders those two sides. Right-click and go into Edge Component Mode. Double-click and separate again. Go into Shell Component Mode again. And then we can move these around. All right, those are now separate, but we still have the issue of one side will look like a mirror image. We can fix that through scaling. And this accomplishes the same thing as rotating the manipulator. Choose the Scale tool. And then once again, hold down the J key. That'll give you discrete scale. And then drag until it flips. You don't want to go so far as to scale it to -2. You just want to scale it to -1. Now that's a perfect mirror image. At this point, we might want to unfold the UV space to prevent texture stretching. If we take a look here on the tail stabilizer here, there's an area at this point where the projection lines coming from the side are nearly parallel with the surface. And in the border area here on the UV layout, the space has been compressed accordingly. You can see how these quadrilaterals are smaller here, and that's because of the texture stretching. We want to unfold this, but before we do, let's sew the two pieces together. Right-click and go into Edge Component Mode, and you can double-click on the border edge. We don't want to select it all the way around, only up to about here. So let's hold down Control and unselect those edges. Control unselect everything except for the edges along this seam here. Once again, hold down Control. Make sure you're unselecting what you want to. So we end up with only the edges here at that seam selected, and then move and sew them together. Move and sew the selected edges. Now they're connected. And finally, we can unfold. Select that shell. Right-click and go into Shell. Click it, and then convert that selection to UVs. Hold down Control and right mouse click. And from the marking menu, choose UV to UV. And now the shell has been converted to a UV selection. Go into the UV Texture Editor menu and choose Polygons, Unfold, Options. Turn up the iterations a little bit just to increase the quality, and turn off Pack. What that would do is reorganize your layout to fit within the 0 to 1 space, but we're going to do that ourselves. Iterations of 5 and Pack off. Click Apply and Close. Now that's been unfolded so that the UV space corresponds to the polygon space. Much better. Very cool. We might want to rotate that a little bit just to straighten it up. Grab the rotate tool, and with those UVs still selected, just try to straighten that a bit, just by eyeball. Cool, so we've got that part unfolded. We also want to unfold the main part of the fuselage. So let's select both of those shells. Right-click and go into shell component mode and select those. Hold down Control-Shift to select the other shell. And then convert that shell selection to UVs. Once again, hold down Control and right-click and choose 2UV, 2UV. With those UVs selected, go back into the UV Texture Editor menu, Polygons, Unfold, Options. This time we want to choose the Legacy algorithm. It's the old school method. And the reason is that gives us the ability to constrain the unfolding. I'd like to constrain it so that these UVs here maintain their same vertical height. I don't want them to move up and down. And the purpose behind that is to make sure that a pixel on our final UV paint actually corresponds from one side to the other. In other words, this point needs to correspond pixel accurate to the point on the other side. And if the UVs moved vertically, then that would never be possible. So we want to make sure that they don't move up and down. To do that, under Unfold Constraint, enable Horizontal. I'd also advise increasing the weight, which is the balance between a local and a global algorithm. Set that to maybe 0.5, halfway between each. And with those two UV shells selected, Unfold Constraint set to horizontal and a weight of 0.5, click Apply and Close. And it's going to take a little bit of time for it to calculate. It's much slower than the 3D algorithm. So give that a couple moments to calculate. All right, our unfold process is just finishing now. It took a couple minutes. And we can check our work. Let's dolly in here and undo and redo that command so we can see what it did to the layout. Edit, undo, and redo. And what it's done is flattened it out and made sure that all of those polygon faces are proportional to their corresponding UV faces. Now we still have a little bit of work to do on these wings here. We want to select those and unfold those separately. Before we do anything else, it's probably a good idea for us to delete the construction history because that last unfold command was very processor intensive. If, for example, I save my scene now and then try to open it later, it will actually have to calculate that unfold process just to open the file. So your file will take several minutes to open. We want to avoid that. Select the object and then right-click, go into Object Mode, and click on it again. And from the menus, choose Edit, Delete by Type, History. Then we can go back into UV selection. Right-click and choose UV. And we want to select the UVs on the wings. We can just do that manually. Just hold down Control-Shift to add to the selection. And of course, it's simply Control to subtract. Okay, I've got the wings selected. I want to unfold those as well without that horizontal constraint. Polygons, Unfold Options, and set the constraint to vertical this time. And once again, Apply and Close. That didn't take quite so long this time. And we can check the results once again. Edit, undo, and see what it did. So it's just cleaned up the edges there a bit. Redo. All right, cool. So we've got our basic layout at this point. And I think we're at a good place to save another version. File, increment and save.